Gorgeous ladies and amazing men. Andy here. I caught up with Pal, who was one of my old coaching clients from about a year and a half ago. He finished his coaching and we talked sort of about what he's been up to. He shared a bunch of like crazy stories about some sex in Colombia and different countries that he's been to. But if you're not familiar with Pal's story, he had sex with 10 women in his 12 weeks of coaching. He opened up a lot. He became a lot more honest. We helped him make a ton of strong friendships, like in the coaching group, and he's then gone on to continue that in our Discord group. We have like a private Discord group that is only for members only for coaching clients only. So yeah, there's just a great catch up. Had a lot of fun talking to him again. I really sometimes miss some of my old coaching clients, and I will jump into the Discord from time to time and see what they're up to and stuff. But it's nice to be able to actually sit down with someone and just chat with them and sort of, shoot the shit and see what they've been up to. So while I've got your attention, I also have an 18-week deal right now for my coaching. So if you sign up in the next 10 days and pay in full, you will get 18 weeks instead of the usual 12. So you can come and change your life just like Pal and so many others did. There's a link to that in the description below. Bro, let's just like start with these crazy dating stories of Colombia. I want to know what it's like, your experience, because I've dated like Asian girls that maybe don't speak English that well. I want to know what the hell it's like going to Colombia and interacting with Spanish speakers when maybe you're not a Spanish speaker yourself. How does that even work?
Yeah, so luckily I do speak some Spanish.
Okay.
But I would say my Spanish improved so much being there simply because nobody speaks English, right? So for context, I've been to Spain for a few months before. I've been to Mexico for like 5 months before. And during those times, I slowly picked up some Spanish,
hmm
right? Enough to have some conversation. So let's say like I would say 75% of dates I went on were like only in Spanish because there was no other option, right? So wait, what was the exact question? Like, how's it like dating there?
Yeah, what's it like dating, I guess, in Colombia, but especially if, you're in a language that maybe isn't your native first language?
Yeah, so basically what you have to do. So I do think it's good to just have a little bit of basics.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's gonna be really difficult, and then you're gonna sit there only with Google Translate, which I've seen guys do, and it has happened. Like I was actually meeting up with another guy who used to be in the coaching, and he was doing that. He was just sitting there with Google Translate and like talking back and forth. There's even an option where you just speak into the phone and then you like pass it to the girl and back and forth. But basically, what it does is that it amplifies all the other stuff that is not verbal, right?
Yeah, because you're going to
So
have to.
yeah, exactly. So what I do is I just I just chat basics. You can like dumb down your humor. You just like
Mhm.
point at things, or you like I don't know, fucking tickle her, like whatever it is. Um,
Point at her boobs and give thumbs up. Yep.
yeah, stuff like that. Didn't do that one, but who
Okay.
knows? They probably would have laughed at it.
hmm
Um, so that's basically what you do. You just dumb down your humor. You keep the eye contact, the tension, and then you use simple language, right? And they're also gonna use simple language to you, and you're gonna say a lot like más lento, like slower, and then she's not slower, and then you like look at her, you're like más lento, chica, stuff like that, whatever. Just like it's more about your expressions in that case, right?
Yeah.
And they can like see they're girls, so they react to this kind of thing.
Yeah,
But
it's almost like without the conversation, you have to like pull down into the physical stuff, like touching her, holding her hands, making like little physical jokes rather than like highbrow, top level conversation. It almost takes some of the pressure off to be a good conversationalist. You don't have to be.
yeah, they like girls don't actually give a shit. Like they don't really care that much about what you say to them, especially in that time. Like they just want to see that okay, you're pretty at ease with yourself. Like you don't mind looking stupid, right? If you say something wrong, like you don't give a shit. That's yeah, that's I think actually a big thing. If we just like quickly segue to like language learning. Like if you really care about what people think you're saying, or like if you really care about like, oh no, I'm not grammatically correct, well then it's gonna be really fucking difficult to talk to anyone. Like, but if you just like think like this is funny, like oh look at me, I'm like kind of clumsy with the language, but I'm totally okay with that, then the girl's gonna be okay with that too. But if you're like, oh, this is like, oh, I feel embarrassed, I said something wrong, and you sit there like, oh, then the girl's gonna
Yeah.
be like, hey, he feels wrong, like, oh, maybe he's just gonna feel whatever you're feeling, right? But if you can be completely cool with it, then she's gonna be completely cool with it too.
Yeah, in other words, give yourself permission to suck and don't stress that much about it. Just have fun. I think that also that's you essentially taking the pressure off yourself to be perfect with conversation. And you're instead of, because I think a lot of guys say, like, their goal when they go on a date is, I have to do a perfect job of this, and I have to say the right thing, and all of my language has to be perfect and, grammatically correct and all that sort of shit. But when you're speaking or you go to a different country where you don't speak the language, because you know what you're saying isn't going to be very good because you don't speak the language. You get out of your own head and you go, okay, maybe the goal is just to have fun and you're just there to entertain yourself and maybe to entertain her as well a little bit. It takes all that fucking pressure off and you just get to the actual thing that you're there for, which is, well, we're here to have fun, we're here to have sex. And again, I have been on some of these dates with like Asian girls and I just find it actually easier than a regular date because it's like, well, I don't even have to worry about the conversation. It's like one less thing to worry about. So, yeah, if you can get out of your own head and not stress about it and instead just say, conversation's going to suck, let's try some other stuff. Yeah, it ends up being pretty fun.
Yeah, and I also have a tip for the if you're in the opposite situation, like it sounds like you were, where you have to
Mhm.
speak English to the girl maybe, but she doesn't get English, but you're not gonna try to speak in Chinese, right? Um,
Correct, yeah.
yeah. Then one thing that I often see like native English speakers do is they just keep their same language. They're like, oh, let me just like
Oh, God,
speak the
I
same way.
know. I know.
Like
It's like
let
you have to make it really dumb and use different words. You have to try and say the most basic way of saying it. Yeah.
exactly. In my experience, a lot of the time native English speakers don't get that if they only speak
Mm,
one language, right?
mm,
Because they just think like, oh, but she's learned English, so English that means like all the language. Like no,
mm,
but that's
yeah.
that's not how language learning works. Like you have to dumb things down. And it's like exactly what you said. Say it in the most basic way.
And with
Um,
physical, like lots of pointing, like you pretty, like stuff like that. And she's like, what's pretty? You nice. And she's like, what that? Me, you together. And then she's like, oh, you want hold hands? And you're like, yes. And then so you have to be very physical as well, I found. Like you have to literally try and show what you're trying to say.
yeah, exactly. Fuck, I forgot the point I was gonna make now, but doesn't matter. Like that's just a tip for native English speakers because I see it all the time. Like I'm pretty good at English at this point, but sometimes I speak with native English speakers and I'm like, what does that mean? And because they use some like slang from their hometown, like 3 hours out of Birmingham, and I don't fucking know, like, right? And like I don't know how to what that means, bro. Right?
And then they just repeat it again. They say it again, the exact same thing. And you're like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I actually have two funny stories about that. When I was in Mexico, so also Spanish speaking country, I was dating this girl, and I invited her out for dinner with like some of my friends. So there was me, two Belgian guys, and one British guy. But we're all just chatting, right? And then afterwards, she was like I don't know. She spoke English. She was like, oh, I don't know what that guy was saying about the British guy. Like she understood all the non-native speakers, but she did not understand what the fuck the British guy was saying. Um, and it's the same here actually. 'Cause now I'm dating a girl who's also Asian, speaks Chinese, but her English is good. Like we talk in English, but she doesn't understand what the fuck Ravi is saying. It's so funny. I've told him the same thing. Like you have to talk to her like in a
You got to
dumbed down
dumb it
way.
down. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't dumb down anything basically, or I might do like a little bit. Her English is good, but he just speaks in a way that she doesn't get it.
Yeah,
pretty
and
funny.
often it's like speaking too quickly and all that sort of stuff. On a
Yeah.
slightly different topic, I want to hear some of these crazy stories that you've told me about before we went on air. You told me about like gold diggers, you told me about getting pickpocketed. Like with this is with women that you're trying to date in Colombia. So tell us some of these crazy stories.
Yeah, so the pickpocketing was actually not a girl. That was just like a dude on the street. But I can get into the girl stuff first, and then maybe, depending on
Hell
where
yeah.
we want to go with it, we can get into the other stuff.
Hell yeah.
But basically, like there are different things you have to navigate when you're in Colombia,
Hmm.
right?
I
Like
can
when
imagine. Yeah.
when you're anywhere else, it's the girl who's thinking about like safety, right? When you're in Colombia, it's the guy thinking about safety, right?
Mm.
You don't, at least in some places. Like before I went, my friends were sending me all these like YouTube videos with there are basically these girls who go on Tinder and then they find the gringos, so all the white guys, and then they go
Yeah.
on dates with them and then they drug them, and then the guy wakes up and like his apartment is completely empty and he doesn't remember what happened because this like drug like scopolamina or scopolamine, I don't know in English. People, yeah. So there's just like precautions, like you don't invite a girl directly to your place without meeting her, for example. Like never do
Hmm.
that. We used to share our location. Like okay, I'm going here with the girl. Like here's like the live location on WhatsApp,
Yeah. Yep.
and then we would like check in on each other, right? Like,
Jesus.
yeah, yeah. Just you just got to take the
So it
precautions.
really is like being a woman. Every woman is listening and she's like, yeah, but this is what I do. Dude, the number of women that have, like, before they come back to my place, they're like, do you just mind if I text my friend? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, do it, do it, do it. So yeah, it's literally a role reversal.
Yeah. So that's something interesting to navigate, and I would say, I mean, I don't want to scare people away from Colombia because this is a fucking amazing place. So like, when people like you can also make it sound like way too scary. The girls are
Mhm.
amazing once you meet them. It's they're great people. Colombian people are amazing, but you do have to take some extra precautions because of how things work there, and there are like cartels and shit. Like just don't be stupid. Just stay safe and don't be one of those people that like, oh yeah. So the last thing I remember is I got into a taxi and I took a shot with the taxi driver at 6 a.m. Oh, I don't know
Yeah.
like what happened. Just don't get fucking drunk on the dates. Like just like take it easy and take simple precautions that will help you like that, right?
Mm.
So that's one thing you have to navigate, right? Then the second thing is there's going to be a lot of girls who are working girls or prostitutes that are on the apps, right? So you have to also be able to screen those out. So, for example, if they say they're going to give you a really good massage before you meet them, then that's a prostitute, right? Most likely. So, I mean, depending on what you want, don't go for that.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah. So there are just like different challenges that you have to navigate there, and you have to be a little bit more careful, basically.
I feel like it's going to be like that for a lot of different countries, right? Like I've heard if you go to Africa, for instance, it's like there's so much STD safety that you need to think about. In different parts of Asia, you need to think about ladyboys and shit like that, depending on what you're into.
You also have
Yeah,
to think
it's
about
the
that in
differences.
Colombia.
Do they really? Do they have a ladyboy population?
I mean, it's not I wouldn't say ladyboy, but there's a lot of trannies, basically.
I
So
did not know that. I did
yeah,
not know that.
like I
Okay.
almost went on a date with a few, but then I realized, but it's not that
That's why you
they're
gotta
like.
you gotta check first, brother. You gotta like just say, can I just feel? You gotta get in there.
That's how you
Just
do it.
feel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't ask them beforehand. Just
You-
go on the date and then yeah, like but there are usually tells, and if you're in doubt, just ask your boys. Like, hey, what do you think about this one?
yep. 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 Where
Otherwise,
did you told me that there was some interesting story where you had like met a girl 5 years after you first approached her? Was that in Colombia or was that somewhere else?
that was actually later.
Okay, please tell me that story.
Okay, so about 5 years ago, I was in I was visiting Turkey. It's not really. It's not. There's nothing crazy in the story other than the timeline. I visited Turkey. I approached a pretty girl in the street. We went on a couple dates, and like at that time, and we like made it back to my place. But for she was a virgin, and then in the end we didn't end up having sex, which was fine. And then we kept talking a little bit, but basically didn't talk to her for like 4 or 5, like a long time, right? And then I left the country. Then I came back, and I thought like, oh yeah, that was that girl. And I just hit her up, and we met again, and we did end up having sex, but it was just like a really long timeline. And yeah,
It's
that
interesting
was
that
really
people
interesting.
remember you after that long. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
right, right. Like, but I think it's probably also something like, I think I was her first sexual experience because she was just 18 at that point. I was obviously also quite a bit younger. So I think she just always had it in her mind or something like that.
Sure.
But yeah, it is kind of crazy. Like first she was like, "Oh wait, oh now I remember you," and then we just chatted a bit more, and then we ended up meeting on a date again.
It
And
kind of
yeah, it's
reminds me a little
interesting
bit.
because
Sorry, you go. You go.
yeah, sorry, um, yeah, it's interesting because I don't know, I changed a lot. I didn't find she changed that much, but like her English was better now, stuff like that. And it like my like how I felt on the date, it was definitely different because back then I kind of had no idea what the fuck to do, and I just like
Sure.
was really clumsy with everything, at least compared to how I feel now. So it was kind of cool to like go out with the same girl later and feel like the difference, and like
Did she
also
notice a
in
difference?
how I
Did
just
you ask her?
feel. I don't think she noticed that much difference,
Hmm.
or she might. I didn't actually ask her. I should ask her.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit what you're talking about here, of like going away and then coming back many years later. Reminds me a lot of Caleb Jones's content. He's someone that, for anyone who doesn't know Caleb Jones, he's someone that very much likes to meet up with people like months or years after he stopped seeing them. He kind of keeps them like on the books, so to speak. And I believe he's got like 10 or 15 different countries where he has like a couple of friends with benefits in each of these countries. And anytime he goes back, even if it's been like 3 or so years, he'll just get his little book out and be like, okay, hey, what are you doing? And he'll reach out to these people, go on a couple of dates or go on a date or two, and then boom, straight back into it. It isn't something that I've done myself, obviously. I don't do a lot of traveling, but yeah, it's fascinating to me that people still sort of like remember each other after all that time. You obviously left a decent impression on her the first time, and she left a decent impression on you.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think okay, it's gonna sound a bit rough maybe, but I think most guys they seem like pretty normal. Like they don't like a lot of guys don't have something really interesting about them. Like when you talk to
Sure.
girls, so it's not that hard to stand out. Is my point. Not that
Yeah.
not that those guys suck or whatever. Like I don't want to say that, but
Well,
I
by
want to say
definition, most people are average. Like that's how
yeah,
statistics works.
exactly. So if you can stand out with something like I know there's a lot of things that stand out about me. Like I don't talk the way most like of the most average people talk. Like I have goals, I have things I'm doing. I'm like probably topics
Yeah.
that girls might not hear all the time, and where they might just go out with the guy and the guy's like drinking and getting drunk. Like I don't actually know, but like that's one thing I actually always ask during dates. Like, what's like the weirdest, most awkward date you had, and then
That's
you
my
get
favorite
some
fucking
stories like
question
that.
to ask girls. Yeah. Yep. 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 Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you want to share
that's a
any
good
of those
question.
interesting stories? Like, what's the weirdest story that any girl has ever said? Because I got one that's just gonna win. My story is gonna win, but like, I want to hear your best story.
Now I'm trying to think of the like most of the stuff is like pretty basic. Oh, the guy was so boring. Then he did this, did that.
Yeah, 100%.
Um,
It's usually like so just like average that it's not even exciting to talk about. It's just like we went on a date for 3 hours and he just made small talk and I felt nothing and that was it. That's like most people's dates. And
yeah.
those guys are doing their best, but yeah, it's average.
So I'll tell you like the typical story that I actually got quite a few times. It's like so I was on a date with a girl in Colombia actually,
Hmm.
Spanish girl. So it was all in English, but she was let's just say like she was making a good living. Like had a successful business, right? And she actually used to live here, where in Budapest,
Mhm.
where I also live. So we're talking about that. And I was like, yeah. So what's like the weirdest shit the guy did? And then she's like, yeah. So I went out on a date with this guy, and we're having like a good time, blah blah blah. And then we like go to a restaurant and stuff. And at the end, it's like time to see who pays. And she's like, oh yeah, like I can pay my part, right?
Mhm.
And he's like, no, 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 I'll pay. And she's like, no, no, like I'll do it. Don't worry about it. Like really, like she's like insisting to pay, but he's like, no, 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 like I will definitely pay it. Don't worry. Okay, so she lets him pay, right? And then they go out on a date later, or I don't remember. They don't go out, but she decides she doesn't want to meet him again at some point.
Mhm.
And then he's like, okay, but can you just send me like 10 euros for the dinner? And I'm like, oh my god, this is like this like mentality of like you're buying the girl, right?
Yeah, I think that is like, she's like a slot machine, and if I put money in, then I get to pull the lever, and sex will come out. And I don't
A
think it's like,
slut machine.
yeah, that was a terrible pun. I don't think they're like literally thinking about it logically. I think in their mind they're just like, but every movie and TV has told me that if I'm a nice guy, then that's how you get girls, and so it can become a bit transactional. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Hey again, guys. I hope you enjoyed that interview. And I forgot to say this at the start of the interview, but Pow was a little nervous to come on camera because the first time he and I did an interview, a year and a half ago when his coaching first ended, he was anonymous. So he still had his name there, but he didn't show his face. And so big props to him. I sort of take it for granted because I'm on camera all the damn time that some people are a little nervous or a little shy or maybe not completely comfortable putting their face on the internet along with, hey, here's my face and I've had a lot of sex recently. I understand that not everyone's super comfortable with that. So this was something that he sort of pushed himself to do. And we had a conversation beforehand and he said, I think I really want to show my face and I'm really scared to do it, but I want to do it. So massive props to him for that. Again, I know it's not always super easy for everybody. So I respect the shit out of that. So while I've also got you here, like I said, now is the right time if you would like to change your life like Power did. I have the 18-week coaching deal just for the next 10 days. So if you sign up and pay in full, you will get 18 weeks instead of the usual 12. Link down below. Click that. We will jump on a call. I'll talk through, is coaching right for you? What do you want to get out of the program? What are your goals? How can we help? And all of that. We'll add you to the program. We'll get started and we will kick some ass. You deserve an awesome life. Let me, let Cam, let Ed, let Taylor, and everybody else in the program help you with that. So click that link below and let's fucking go.